Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The rain poured heavily over the bustling streets of Lagos, the capital of ambition and chaos in modern Africa. Neon lights reflected off the rain-slicked roads, creating a kaleidoscope of colors that illuminated the city. But beneath the vibrant facade lay a city that was unkind to the vulnerable. Adunni knew this too well. Adunni staggered through the crowded streets, her clothes drenched and clinging to her frail frame. She clutched the thin shawl around her shoulders, though it offered no warmth. Her lips trembled, not just from the cold but from the gnawing hunger that had haunted her for days. For weeks, she had wandered the streets, homeless and alone, clutching onto the fragments of hope that one day things might get better. That night, hope seemed like a distant memory. She turned into a narrow alley, the distant laughter of bar patrons echoing behind her. She didn't see them at first, 3 men lurking in the shadows. Her instincts kicked in too late. A hand grabbed her arm, yanking her backward. "Where do you think you're going, pretty one?" one of the men sneered, his voice slurred from alcohol. "Please, I have nothing," Adunni whispered, her voice trembling. "That's not what we're after," another growled. They dragged her into the darkest corner of the alley. She struggled, her cries for help drowned by the roar of thunder and the relentless rain. The men laughed, their intentions clear. Adunni's strength was no match for them. As the attack unfolded, she prayed for deliverance. Her world faded into pain, and then darkness. Chukwudi was frustrated. The 27-year-old heir to one of Nigeria's largest conglomerates had been dragged to yet another networking party by his father. Despite the opulence around him, chandeliers, gold-plated cutlery, and Lagos elite exchanging pleasantries, Chukwudi felt hollow. He wasn't interested in inheriting his father's empire, he wanted a life of his own. Yet, the weight of expectation was a chain he couldn't escape. After hours of forced smiles and shallow conversations, he decided he'd had enough. Ignoring the curious stares of the guests, he left the banquet hall and stepped into the rain. His driver offered to bring the car around, but Chukwudi shook his head. He needed to be alone. He drove his sleek Range Rover through the near-empty streets, the rhythmic patter of rain on the windshield calming his restless mind. As he turned onto a quieter road, his headlights illuminated something, or someone, lying in the middle of the street. "What the?" he muttered, slamming on the brakes. He stepped out, the rain drenching him instantly. The figure on the road wasn't moving. As he approached, he saw her, a young woman, battered and barely conscious, her face pale and her lips cracked. Blood trickled from a cut on her forehead, mixing with the rain. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She didn't respond. Chukwudi's heart raced. He wasn't sure if she was alive. He placed 2 fingers on her neck, searching for a pulse. It was faint but there. "Stay with me," he murmured. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms and carried her to his car. The rain blurred his vision, but he moved with purpose. Whoever she was, she needed help. The private hospital Chukwudi brought her to was one of the best in Lagos. The doctors quickly took over, wheeling her into the emergency room. Chukwudi paced the waiting area, his wet clothes clinging to him uncomfortably. He couldn't get the image of her battered face out of his mind. After what felt like hours, a doctor approached him. "She's stable," the doctor said. "But she's malnourished and severely dehydrated. The injuries suggest she was attacked." Chukwudi sighed in relief. "Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated. "She's awake, but she's weak. Don't overwhelm her." Chukwudi nodded and followed the doctor to her room. The young woman lay on the hospital bed, her eyes half open. Her face was pale, and the bruises on her arms and neck were stark against her dark skin. When her eyes met his, there was a flicker of fear. "It's okay," he said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe now." Her lips parted, but no words came out. "I found you on the road," he continued. "Do you remember what happened?" Tears welled up in her eyes. She nodded faintly but didn't speak. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Adunni," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Chukwudi smiled faintly. "Adunni, I'm Chukwudi. You don't have to worry anymore." Over the next few days, Adunni remained in the hospital, regaining her strength. Chukwudi visited daily, bringing her food and small comforts like books and fresh clothes. He learned that she had been homeless for months after fleeing her village to escape an abusive uncle. She had come to Lagos in search of a better life, but the city had been merciless. "You didn't have to help me," she said one evening, her voice steadier than before. "People like me, no one cares?" Chukwudi frowned. "That's not true. Everyone deserves a chance." "Why are you being kind to me?" she asked, her eyes searching his. He hesitated. He didn't have an answer, at least not one that made sense. "Because it's the right thing to do." Adunni looked away, tears glistening in her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt seen. As the days passed, Chukwudi found himself drawn to Adunni's resilience. Despite everything she had endured, there was a quiet strength in her. She shared bits of her story with him, her dreams, her struggles, and the pain of being abandoned by the world. In return, Chukwudi shared his frustrations about his gilded cage of privilege. By the time Adunni was discharged, Chukwudi had made a decision. "You can't go back to the streets," he said firmly. "Come stay at my family's guest house until you figure out your next steps." Adunni hesitated. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," he assured her. "Let me help." Reluctantly, she agreed. As they drove toward his family's estate, Adunni looked out the window at the sprawling city. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope. This is the start of a journey neither of them could have anticipated, a journey that would change their lives forever. The gates to the Ease family estate opened slowly, revealing a sprawling property that seemed to stretch endlessly. A lush garden flanked the cobblestone driveway, its perfectly trimmed hedges glistening from the morning dew. The main mansion loomed ahead, an architectural masterpiece that combined modern design with traditional African motifs. Adunni's eyes widened as she took it all in from the passenger seat of Chukwudi's car. This is where you live?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Chukwudi, seated in the driver's seat, chuckled softly. "It's not as overwhelming as it looks. You'll get used to it." Adunni remained silent, unsure how to process the grandeur around her. She hadn't been inside a proper home in months, and now she was being invited to stay in a place that looked like it belonged in a magazine. As the car came to a stop in front of the guest house, a smaller but equally elegant building on the estate, Chukwudi turned to her. "This will be your space for as long as you need it. Don't worry about anything. The staff will bring you meals and make sure you're comfortable." Adunni hesitated, her hands gripping the frayed edges of her shawl. "This is too much. I don't know how I can ever repay you." "You don't have to," Chukwudi said, his tone firm yet kind. "Just focus on getting back on your feet." The guest house was a sanctuary. Unlike the cold streets she was used to, it exuded warmth and comfort. The living room was furnished with soft couches and traditional African art, blending modern luxury with cultural pride. A small bedroom awaited her, its bed covered with crisp white sheets that smelled faintly of lavender. For the first time in what felt like forever, Adunni felt safe. As the days passed, Adunni began to settle in. True to his word, Chukwudi ensured that she lacked for nothing. Fresh clothes appeared in her closet, the meals delivered to her were hearty and delicious, and she had access to books, a television, and even a small garden outside the guest house. But adapting to this new life wasn't easy for her. She often found herself staring out the window, guilt gnawing at her. Why had she been given this second chance when so many others in her position weren't? What did she do to deserve this kindness from a man she barely knew? Chukwudi, however, was determined to make her feel at ease. He visited her daily, sometimes bringing coffee or snacks. Other times he simply sat and listened as she opened up about her life. One afternoon, as they sat in the garden, Adunni shared her story in greater detail. "My mother died when I was 13, she began, her voice heavy with emotion. "She was the only person who ever cared about me. After she passed, my uncle took me in, At first, he seemed kind, but he wasn't. Chukwudi leaned forward, listening intently. He would beat me for the smallest mistakes, she continued. And when I turned 16, he tried to marry me off to a man twice my age. That's when I ran away. I thought I'd find opportunities in Lagos, but the city doesn't care about people like me. I've been on my own ever since. Chukwudi's fists clenched as he listened. He couldn't imagine the strength it had taken for her to survive all she had endured. You didn't deserve any of that, he said, his voice laced with anger on her behalf. You're incredibly brave, Adunni. She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't feel brave. You're not alone anymore, he said gently. You have me now. Chukwudi's own struggles began to surface as he spent more time with Adunni. Despite his privileged upbringing, he had always felt trapped by his father's expectations. Chief Ease, his father, was a formidable man who had built their family's wealth through years of relentless work. He expected Chukwudi to follow in his footsteps, but Chukwudi's passions lay elsewhere. He wanted to use his resources to make a difference, not just to amass more wealth. Sometimes, I feel like I'm just a shadow of what my father wants me to be, Chukwudi confided one evening. He sees the world through profit and power. I want something more meaningful. Adunni tilted her head, studying him. But you're helping me. That's meaningful. Her words struck a chord with him. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose, a desire to do good not because it was expected, but because it was right. The weeks turned into months, and their bond grew stronger. Adunni, with Chukwudi's support, began to explore opportunities to rebuild her life. She expressed a desire to work and earn her independence, and Chukwudi arranged for her to meet with a friend who ran a non-profit organization. The organization helped women who had faced similar struggles find employment and education. You have so much potential, Adunni, Chukwudi told her after the meeting. This is just the beginning. Adunni's confidence slowly blossomed. She enrolled in a vocational training program through the nonprofit, learning skills that could help her build a future. Though the process was challenging, she tackled it with determination. One evening, as they sat under the stars in the garden, Chukwudi turned to her. You've changed so much since I found you on that road. So have you, she replied, smiling softly. He laughed. Maybe you've been the one helping me all along. Adunni looked at him, her heart pounding. Over the months, her gratitude toward Chukwudi had deepened into something she couldn't quite name. She pushed the thought aside, unsure if it was mutual or even appropriate. But Chukwudi's feelings were just as conflicted. He admired her strength and resilience, and he found himself drawn to her warmth and honesty. Yet, he wondered if their differences in background would make a relationship impossible. By the end of her training program, Adunni had secured a part-time job at the nonprofit. She was ecstatic, and Chukwudi celebrated with her, taking her out to a quiet dinner at a local restaurant. I owe all of this to you, she said, raising her glass of juice. No, he said firmly. You've done this for yourself. I'm just lucky to have been part of your journey. Adunni's heart swelled. For the first time, she allowed herself to hope for more. A life where she could thrive, not just survive. And perhaps, a life with Chukwudi. Neither of them realized it yet, but their lives were on a path that would intertwine in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The seeds of something deeper had been planted, and they were about to grow into something extraordinary. The morning sunlight poured into the garden of the Ease family estate, its warmth a gentle reminder of new beginnings. Adunni stood by a small flowering tree, her fingers brushing the petals of a bright yellow bloom. The serenity of the moment was a stark contrast to the chaos her life had been before Chukwudi's intervention. She had come a long way. With her part-time job at the nonprofit and her new sense of stability, Adunni felt as though she were finally stepping into a future of her own making. Yet, a part of her remained tethered to Chukwudi. He had become more than her rescuer. He was her confidant, her supporter, and her friend. But there was something unspoken between them, a magnetic pull that neither dared to address. Chukwudi sat in his father's office that afternoon, distracted as his father droned on about a new business deal. Chief Ease, a towering man with a booming voice and an intimidating presence, didn't notice his son's wandering mind. Chukwudi, are you even listening? His father snapped. Yes, sir, Chukwudi replied automatically, though his thoughts were far from the spreadsheets and projections spread out before them. He was thinking about Adunni, her smile, her determination, and the way she lit up when she talked about her dreams. Good, Chief Ease continued. This deal is crucial for expanding our operations in South Africa. I need you to attend the meeting in Johannesburg next month. Chukwudi hesitated. He had no desire to take on more responsibilities in the family business, but defying his father outright was a battle he wasn't ready to fight. Instead, he nodded silently, hoping to change the subject. As he left the office, his thoughts returned to Adunni. She had reminded him of the kind of impact he wanted to make, a life of purpose, not just profit. He resolved to spend more time with her, away from the suffocating expectations of his family. That evening, Chukwudi invited Adunni to a charity gala hosted by one of his friends. It was a small, elegant event focused on raising funds for women's education in rural Nigeria. Adunni hesitated at first, uncertain about stepping into a world she felt she didn't belong to. I don't have anything to wear, she said shyly. I've already taken care of that, Chukwudi replied with a grin, handing her a garment bag. You'll look amazing. Later that evening, when Adunni emerged from the guest house dressed in a flowing, emerald green gown, Chukwudi was momentarily speechless. The dress hugged her figure perfectly, and her natural beauty shone through. For the first time, he saw her not just as someone he had helped, but as a woman who had completely captivated him. You look stunning, he managed to say. Adunni blushed, her confidence faltering. Are you sure I won't embarrass you? Adunni, you could never embarrass me, he said, offering his arm. Come on. Let's show everyone how amazing you are. The gala was a dazzling affair. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the room, and the soft hum of conversation mingled with the gentle strains of live jazz. Adunni felt out of place at first, but Chukwudi stayed by her side, introducing her to people and making her feel at ease. As the night went on, she began to relax. She found herself laughing at Chukwudi's jokes and engaging in conversations about the non-profit work she was passionate about. Several attendees expressed interest in her story and her efforts to rebuild her life. You have a way of inspiring people, Chukwudi said as they stepped onto the balcony for some fresh air. I'm just telling the truth, Adunni replied, gazing out at the city lights. It still feels unreal sometimes being here, being happy. You deserve happiness, he said softly. You've worked hard for it. Adunni turned to him, her heart pounding. The way he looked at her, like she was the only person who mattered, made her feel both vulnerable and cherished. She wanted to say something, to express the feelings she had been holding back, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, they stood in silence, the unspoken connection between them growing stronger with each passing moment. The weeks that followed were filled with small moments that deepened their bond. They went on long walks in the estate's garden, sharing stories and dreams. Chukwudi took her to cultural events around Lagos, introducing her to art, music, and literature that resonated with her. In turn, Adunni shared her knowledge of traditional Nigerian crafts and cuisine, teaching him how to prepare simple but flavorful dishes. One afternoon, as they worked together in the kitchen, Chukwudi paused to watch her. Adunni's laughter filled the room as she teased him for over-salting the stew. Her joy was infectious, and he found himself laughing along. You have no idea how much you've changed my life, he said suddenly. Adunni stopped, her smile fading. What do you mean? I mean, you've made me see things differently, he said, his voice earnest. You've shown me what it means to live with purpose. I don't think I've ever admired anyone as much as I admire you. Adunni's cheeks flushed. I could say the same about you. You've given me hope when I had none. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Chukwudi took a step closer, his hand brushing hers. Adunni, Before he could finish, a loud knock on the door interrupted them. One of the house staff entered, apologizing for the intrusion. The moment was lost, but the feelings lingered, unspoken yet undeniable. As the months passed, it became clear to both of them that their connection was more than friendship. Yet, They remained cautious, unsure of how to bridge the gap between their worlds. Adunni worried about the judgment she might face as a former homeless woman trying to enter a wealthy family. Chukwudi feared his father's reaction to his growing love for a woman who didn't fit the mold of high society. But despite their fears, their feelings continued to grow, like a tree whose roots deepen with time. They couldn't ignore the love that was blossoming between them, a love that would soon face its greatest test. The morning sun bathed the E's estate in a warm glow, but the atmosphere inside the main mansion was far from serene. Chief Eze's booming voice echoed through the hallways as he discussed business matters on a call. The patriarch of the Eze family was known for his commanding presence, and few dared to challenge his authority. Chukwudi knew this better than anyone. Chukwudi sat in his room, nervously tapping his pen against a notebook. He had made up his mind. The feelings he had for Adunni were undeniable, and he knew he wanted to take their relationship to the next level. But convincing his father would be a battle. He glanced at his phone and reread the message he had typed. "Dad, can we meet later? I have something important to discuss." After a deep breath, he hit send. Meanwhile, in the guest house, Adunni sat on the veranda, her hands clasped around a steaming cup of tea. Though she had grown accustomed to the comfort of her new life, a part of her still felt out of place. The thought of being with Chukwudi filled her with joy, but it also terrified her. She knew that their love would face scrutiny, especially from his family and their social circle. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled her from her thoughts. Chukwudi appeared, his usual confident demeanor replaced by a look of uncertainty. "Good morning," he said, sitting beside her. "Good morning. You look tense," Adunni observed, setting her cup down. "I've been thinking a lot," he admitted, his voice soft. "About us." Adunni's heart skipped a beat. "And? I want to take this to the next level," he said, meeting her eyes. "I want my father to know about you." "About us?" Adunni's chest tightened. "Chukwudi, are you sure? What if he doesn't approve?" "I don't care what he thinks," Chukwudi said firmly. "This isn't about him. It's about us. But I won't lie to you, it won't be easy. My father, he has expectations." Adunni nodded, her mind racing. She wanted to believe that love could conquer all, but the thought of facing Chief Eze's judgment made her stomach churn. Still, she couldn't deny how much she cared for Chukwudi. She took his hand in hers. "I'm with you," she said softly. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." Later that day, Chukwudi stood in his father's study, the heavy oak desk and leather-bound books adding to the room's intimidating aura. Chief Eze sat across from him, his sharp eyes scanning his son's face. "You wanted to talk to me?" the elder Eze asked, his tone brisk. "It's about someone important to me," Chukwudi began, his palms sweating. Chief Eze raised an eyebrow. "Important? Who?" Chukwudi took a deep breath. "Her name is Adunni. She's the woman I've been spending time with. I love her." For a moment, the room fell silent. Then, Chief Eze leaned back in his chair, a frown deepening the lines on his face. "Adunni," he repeated. "Who is she? Where is she from?" "She's a strong, intelligent woman," Chukwudi said. "She's been through a lot, but she's rebuilding her life. She's working at a non-profit and—" Chief Eze cut him off. "Chukwudi, don't sugarcoat this. Is she from our circle? Is her family reputable?" "She's not from our world," Chukwudi admitted. "But that doesn't matter. She's incredible, and I want to be with her." Chief Eze's expression hardened. "You're my son, the heir to everything I've built. You think you can marry someone with no background, no standing? What will people say?" "I don't care what people say," Chukwudi exclaimed, his voice rising. "Adunni is worth more than all the wealth and status in the world. She's changed my life." Chief Eze's gaze turned cold. "You're being reckless. This isn't just about you, Chukwudi. This family has a reputation to uphold." Chukwudi clenched his fists. "I've always followed your rules, Dad. But this is my life, and I won't let you dictate who I can love." The tension in the room was palpable. Chief Eze stood, towering over his son. "If you choose her, you'll be choosing against this family." Chukwudi stared at his father, his heart pounding. "If that's what it takes, then so be it." Word of Chukwudi's defiance spread quickly through the estate. The staff whispered in hushed tones, and even Adunni noticed the strained atmosphere. When Chukwudi returned to the guest house, his face was etched with frustration. "What happened?" Adunni asked, rising to meet him. "My father doesn't approve," he said, running a hand through his hair. "He thinks you're not good enough because you don't come from a wealthy family." Adunni's heart sank. "I told you this would happen." "I don't care what he thinks," Chukwudi said fiercely. "I love you, Adunni. And I'm not giving up on us." Tears welled up in Adunni's eyes. "Chukwudi, I don't want to come between you and your family." "You're not," he insisted. "This is my fight, not yours." But deep down, Adunni knew that their love would be tested in ways they hadn't yet imagined. A journey for blessings. Determined to prove their love, Chukwudi suggested they visit his mother's village, where his maternal grandparents still lived. His mother had passed away years ago, but her family remained an influential part of his life. If they could gain their blessing, it might soften Chief Iza's stance. The journey was long, and as the plane touched down in Enugu, Adunni couldn't help but feel a mix of anxiety and hope. Chukwudi held her hand tightly, offering silent reassurance. When they arrived at the village, they were greeted warmly by Chukwudi's grandparents. His grandmother, a petite woman with a kind smile, welcomed Adunni with open arms. Over the course of their visit, Adunni shared her story, her dreams, and her love for Chukwudi. "You remind me of my younger self," Chukwudi's grandmother said one evening. "Strong, determined, and full of life. If my grandson loves you, that's all that matters." The next morning, the elders gathered for a blessing ceremony. Adunni knelt beside Chukwudi as prayers were offered, their hands entwined. The weight of the moment brought tears to her eyes. For the first time, she felt truly accepted. As they returned to Lagos, Adunni and Chukwudi knew they still had challenges to face. But they also knew that their love was worth fighting for. Together, they prepared to confront Chief Iza one final time, determined to prove that love could bridge even the widest gaps. The air in the Iza family estate was tense. Adunni and Chukwudi had returned from Enugu, their resolve stronger than ever. The blessing from Chukwudi's maternal grandparents had given them hope, but they knew the ultimate battle lay ahead. Chief Iza, a man of unyielding principles, was the final gatekeeper to their happiness. Chukwudi paced in the grand living room, his mind racing as he prepared to face his father once more. Adunni sat on a nearby couch, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Though she tried to appear calm, her heart pounded with uncertainty. She knew how much this moment meant to Chukwudi, and she wanted to be strong for him. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly, breaking the silence. He stopped pacing and turned to her. "I know. But I need him to see how serious I am." Adunni nodded, her gaze steady. "Then I'll stand by you." The confrontation. When Chief Iza entered the room, his presence was commanding as always. He glanced at his son, then at Adunni, his expression unreadable. Chukwudi stood tall, his resolve unwavering. "You wanted to speak to me," Chief Iza said, his tone cold. "Yes, Dad," Chukwudi replied. "I wanted to talk to you about Adunni." Again. Chief Iza sighed, a trace of irritation flashing across his face. "Chukwudi, we've already discussed this. My stance hasn't changed. And neither has mine," Chukwudi said firmly. "But before you dismiss this, I need you to listen, to really listen." For the first time, Chief Iza looked directly at Adunni. "What is it that you want, young woman? To marry into wealth? To live a life of luxury without earning it?" Adunni flinched but quickly composed herself. "No, sir," she said, her voice steady. "I don't want anything from you or your family except the chance to love your son. He has been kind to me when the world was not. He saw value in me when I couldn't see it in myself. I don't care about your wealth, I care about him." Chief Iza's eyes narrowed, his skepticism evident. "Words are easy, but actions matter more. What can you offer him that he can't find elsewhere?" Adunni straightened her back. "I can offer him loyalty, respect, and love. I may not have the background you want, but I've fought for everything I have. I know the value of hard work, and I know how to build a life from nothing. Chukwudi deserves someone who will stand by him, Not because of what he has, but because of who he is. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, Chief Ease seemed taken aback. He turned to Chukwudi. And you? Are you willing to risk everything for this woman? Chukwudi didn't hesitate. Yes, offered. I've seen the world you value so much, and it doesn't fulfill me. What fulfills me is the life we could build together. One based on meaning, not status. Chief Ease's gaze softened ever so slightly. For the first time, he saw the conviction in his son's eyes, a determination he couldn't ignore. He sighed deeply, running a hand over his face. You're stubborn, just like your mother, he muttered. She always fought for what she believed in, no matter the odds. Chukwudi and Adunni exchanged a glance, a flicker of hope igniting between them. Chief Ease finally sat down, his imposing figure less intimidating. If this is what you want, Chukwudi, then so be it. But know that love is not easy. It requires sacrifice and compromise. If you're ready to face that, I won't stand in your way. Relief washed over Chukwudi, and he took Adunni's hand. Thank you, Dad. Chief Ease waved them off, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Don't thank me yet. The road ahead won't be as simple as you think. The wedding. Preparations for the wedding began almost immediately. Adunni and Chukwudi decided to honor both their backgrounds, blending modern elegance with traditional Nigerian customs. The ceremony was set to take place in Enugu, where their journey toward acceptance had begun. On the day of the wedding, the village buzzed with excitement. Vibrant decorations adorned the venue, and the air was filled with the rhythmic beat of talking drums. Adunni wore a stunning ivory lace dress with intricate beading, complemented by a traditional gele that framed her radiant face. Chukwudi wore a sharp agbada, his outfit a testament to his Yoruba heritage. As Adunni walked down the aisle, escorted by the elders who had blessed their union, she couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by emotion. This moment was the culmination of everything she had fought for: love, acceptance, and a future filled with hope. Chukwudi stood at the altar, his eyes fixed on her. When she finally reached him, he took her hands in his smile reassuring. You look beautiful, he whispered. And you look nervous, she teased, earning a chuckle from him. The ceremony was a celebration of love that transcended class and circumstance. Vows were exchanged, prayers were said, and blessings were given. Even Chief Ease, who sat in the front row with a stoic expression, seemed moved by the love radiating between the couple. A new chapter. After the wedding, Chukwudi and Adunni returned to Lagos, where they began building their life together. Adunni continued her work at the nonprofit, eventually founding her own organization to support women who had faced similar struggles. Chukwudi, inspired by her passion, shifted his focus to philanthropic ventures, using his resources to make a tangible difference. Their love story became a source of inspiration for many, proving that love could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. They traveled often, exploring the world while staying grounded in their shared values. Years later, as they sat on the veranda of their home, watching their children play in the garden, Chukwudi turned to Adunni. Do you ever think about how far we've come? He asked. Adunni smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. Every day. And I wouldn't change a thing. Their journey had been anything but easy, but it was worth every challenge. Together, they had built a life filled with love, purpose, and happiness, a testament to the power of believing in each other against all odds. The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.